Hello and welcome to the CyberSpark podcast. I'm Will Leitch. Now, last time we tried to get a handle on what cyber actually is. This time we're thinking about the rise of the cyber industry, how cyber's become one of the fastest growing global sectors with its own career opportunities, skill demands. We'll even take a look at the future job landscape. It's great to have Peter Leitch with me. Hi, Peter.
I will.
Peter co-founded one of the top cybersecurity consulting firms here in Northern Ireland. That's Ansec IA Limited. It's now part of the Outsource Group. Since he's moved on after a long career, he now consults widely. He chairs a cyber advisory group for the Northern Ireland Executive's Department of Finance, with a strong focus on education and on finding the next generation of cyber professionals. Peter, let's go back in time first of all. Once upon a time, there wasn't a cyber industry as we know it. There was IT, the big old chunky mainframe systems with green flashing lights and big old VDU screens, and there was IT security. And that's where you started, I think, isn't it?
Yes, and it was actually radio that got me into it. When I started in banking, they were just starting to computerize Honeywell Bull DPS-8 mainframes and very slow line speeds. But the problem was, in those days, private lines between point-to-point circuits meant between the head office computer and the branch. There wasn't really a way to break in, and it's really only whenever the internet really takes off that cyber becomes an issue and people start to connect everything. I remember going to a conference and Microsoft did a really good parody of Genesis where they said in the beginning there was a PC and it was great. And then they developed a network and it just spread and spread. So the more you connect, the more you get difficulties with security.
So we had IT security back at the start, and in your career, you moved into that. Now we have cyber. The transition clearly took a few years, but how did it sort of one become the other?
Cybersecurity is very, very wide. Different techniques used by threat actors. One of the key ways of breaking in is social engineering, and that's been around for centuries, decades. In the early days, to get into a system, you physically had to get into the mainframe system. You had to actually, or get to a terminal and do something. As you connect more, it became easier to remotely access. And that's really, I would say, probably 20 years ago, cyber started to become a problem. The reason we called ANSEC IA was we referred to information assurance, and we would argue that IT security and information assurance is much wider than just cyber. Cyber is internet connected only. And I've worked with customers who will never have a cyber attack because they don't connect to the internet, but their information would be incredibly sensitive.
Yeah, so they have to be careful because
Mhm.
it just cannot be allowed
Yes.
to happen. Cyber growth then in Northern Ireland, was it business led? Was it government led?
A combination of both. I think the industry, so you had several things happened. A growth in the interest in cybersecurity. You had some very good educational facilities in Queen's University, University of Ulster. The Centre for Secure IT that Queen's pulled together in CSIT really gave a focus on the academia. But I think the other advantage we had is you get a lot of inward investment from the States, companies finding that you'd a very good workforce, a well-educated workforce, a nice place to work. So it started to take off that way. Plus, then you had the local organizations who were working in that space. So over time, I think we just had the right elements in place. Government did pick up very quickly this was important. And then one of the strategies set up, oh gosh, 5 years plus ago, they set a target of 5,000 cyber professionals in Northern Ireland by 2030. Now, I'd say we're around about 3,000 at the minute. So there's still opportunities to do more.
There's 5 years to find a few more thousand
Yeah.
effectively.
Yes.
It's interesting that you draw that distinction between the practical education and the academic education. Getting an industry taken seriously means people do need to research it, write papers on it. Those need to be published. Academics see it, they get widely read as sources. That's important. But unless people know how to make things and do things and make them work and operationally understand that this needs to be fixed now, you're not going to get anywhere. So you need both, but they are quite distinct, those two sides.
They are distinct, and I think where we've been clever in Northern Ireland is we've managed to bring those elements together. And I guess the advisory group that I chair is designed to do that. It's bringing academia with public sector, with the private sector, and we're looking at the practicalities as well as the academia requirements. So what we're trying to make sure is the industry are getting the staff they need, because the courses that Queen's, University of Ulster, and Belfast Met are producing are actually good for industry. And again, we've got multiple levels there as well. We've got some very practically focused courses, like the apprenticeship schemes that Belfast Met run, and other colleges as well. And then you've got the more academic research that's going on in Queen's and University of Ulster. Tie those together, bring the inward investment, companies coming across, and we've got some large companies coming in from the States. Look at the local capability as well, and suddenly you've got the right melting pot to actually generate quite a lot of cyber activity. And I mean, some people say Northern Ireland has two advantages. We're small enough, we know each other. The cyber cluster that's been formed to try and drive innovation across the small startup companies is working really well because of that. And dare I say it, some people say Northern Ireland folk get security.
Historically, you might
Mhm.
imagine that to be the case. Those 5,000 cyber jobs within 4 or 5 years, that means upcoming, mostly young people wanting a career and building it. You're looking to recruit, train, enthuse, educate,
Mm.
presumably.
Yes, and there are a few things that are going on that help with that. There's Cyber First, so the Department of Science, Innovation and Technology, DSIT, and the National Cybersecurity Centre have put a lot of effort into schemes to try and encourage this. And it's being picked up by a number of local firms. Alflac are doing a lot of stuff in support of Cyber First, particularly focused on STEM subjects, and focused particularly on young women in education, to try and encourage them into the cyber industry, because the skill sets required are very, very wide. They range from deep technical understanding, malware analysis, coding, penetration testing, where you're actually trying to break into systems, if you like, ethical hacking, where you're trying to actually take a system apart, right the way through to the software management skills, where you may be talking about IT security standards. Is NIST version 2 better than ISO 27001? Things like that. So there's a wide gambit of opportunities for people. And you're right, we need bright young people to come into the industry, because it's changing, and it's going to change even more with AI and things like that.
I think probably you would still find an element of society which doesn't really understand the threats. They
Yes.
understand scamming. They
Yes.
understand people ringing them up
Yes.
or emailing them or saying the traditional, and you see it all over social media,
Yeah.
hi mum, I've lost my mobile phone, and you think, hey, well, my son is 2, or I don't have any children,
Yeah.
and then it's ridiculous. And there's a lot of talk about that. But what are the common threats? We're talking very generally here. Um, for malware, ransomware, these terms like phishing, we hear personally, domestically, but also in small business and in bigger businesses, NGOs, government,
Mm.
states. It does exist, and we'll get into it in detail in another
Mm.
episode. But in general terms, how would you assess it?
Phishing and ransomware are still two of the biggest things. I think the biggest change recently in the threat footprint, combination of things, a lot of foreign state actors getting involved. The world is not a safe place, and there's a lot more happening. There's a lot of funding, and the large criminal organizations are also doing a lot more. They're prepared to spend the time and the money and resource to actually to target organizations. Ransomware is still the number one issue, I think, in terms of threats. Phishing comes very, very close to that, and quite often phishing is the way that ransomware is delivered to an individual.
Get you to click on
Um,
one thing, and
yeah,
bang, it's
actually,
happened.
you're talking about scamming. The interesting thing is, and I've forgotten the guy's name, but one of the top anti-scammers is a Northern Ireland-based
That's right.
guy, who does a lot of work in actually taking down scammers, because he makes the point in one of his blogs that actually scammers rely on the social engineering fear factor, but they're not necessarily technically that great themselves. And he attacks that, which
Well, a
is
lot
quite
of them are
interesting.
compounds acting under duress. Sadly, the way the world works, so there's that happening as
Absolutely.
well.
Yeah.
You use a term sometimes. I just want to quickly brush on it. Basic hygiene in the domestic situation. Now, that doesn't mean keeping your sink or your kitchen floors clean,
Which is a good idea, of
which
course,
is a
but
good idea,
yeah.
my wife tells me. But what is it? What does it mean in terms of how you look after all the devices in your house?
Well, basic hygiene means making sure that you've got different passwords for different accounts. The passwords are complex. You've got multi-factor authentication, which means you maybe need not just a password, you need something else that you control. It might be on your phone or something like that that you can, or just even simply an SMS message that comes to your phone that you then put a key code into your software solution. It's making sure that you keep your updates going on your phones. If you have an iPhone or an Android and it tells you you have an update, put the update on, because one of the key ways into a system is exploiting vulnerabilities. And as vulnerabilities are discovered by the manufacturers, they fix them in releases. So if you're behind in upgrades, you're going to get a hit. And personally, don't connect your toaster to the internet.
Well, why would be the need? But I do know that people can. I think the interesting thing about all of this is someone listening to this can say to themselves, "This sounds fascinating. I'd like to work in this." And there will be job opportunities coming up for sure. So going forward, we have privacy, data privacy, security
Mm.
to industry. This is only going to be, from the world situation you've outlined, going to be more and more important, and there will be needs and there will be work to deal with this.
So I think there's a realization probably 2, 3, maybe 5 years ago that data privacy is a problem. People have been too free with their own personal details and social media. Companies have encouraged you to sign up, log in, give a lot of personal data,
About
which they can
myself.
then use. And now,
Yeah.
yeah, artificial intelligence is enabling them to manipulate that data further. And actually, people are now starting to realize they're giving away too much information. There's a very good, the Irish National Cybersecurity Centre put out a video on that, and it's really worth watching. It's about a mum, dad, and a little girl. I'm not going into the whole detail, but basically, they're in a shopping centre. They're going up an escalator, and as they're going up the escalator, a stranger going down reaches over and pats the wee girl on her head, and says, "Happy birthday, Sarah." And
Chilling.
yes, it is chilling, and the end's even worse. So digital privacy is a big issue. People are now starting to roll back in terms of what information they've given out. Governance is going to be a big area, particularly around artificial intelligence. Artificial intelligence is a plus and a minus from a cybersecurity point of view. It's allowing organizations to automate more processes, so SOCs, security operating centers, can do a lot more automation and detect problems quickly. On the other side, however, it's also making it easier for the bad guys to actually look for vulnerabilities and exploit them. And then as well on the dark web, you can now buy packages that will let you, I'd like to attack a bank. Here is our bank package. We'll rent it to you for so many
Really?
months.
I mean, you mentioned AI several times there, and you talked
Mm,
about there being pluses and minuses with it. We are both old enough to have been around in the 1990s in the dot-com boom, and I
mhm,
was working in London, and I saw an awful lot of money thrown at the internet and web, or as
mm.
some of my managers would have called it, that thingy, because they didn't know what it was. And that's my point. AI is a sort of a frenzy at the moment. There's a
Absolutely.
huge
Yeah,
billions of dollars, pounds, whatever currency you like, going towards it. Some people understand it. Most
absolutely.
people, I think, don't. Most people are instinctively frightened of it because sometimes it's helpful, sometimes it's thick. That's a joke, whatever. It is a very strange time, isn't it?
It is a very strange time, and just this morning, Oracle's announced that their profits aren't as big as expected, and they're throwing lots of money into AI. And there's a growing concern in the technology market, if you like, that AI might be a bubble and about to burst. There's a classic cartoon where you've got a bunch of CEOs shouting, "What do you want? We want AI. When do you want it? We want it now. What do you want it for? Don't know. But we want it now because it's the buzzword." It's like, years ago, I want an iPad. Why do you want an iPad? Well, because all my CEO friends have an iPad. Yeah, but won't let you do your work very efficiently. So I think AI is going to be important for sure. It's doing some good stuff. Some of the things it can do are quite amazing. Quick example, using AI, I know one of the hospitals in Wales have managed to cut their cost of um, oxygen purchased by about 50%.
Wow.
because AI can track where the cylinders are around the hospital. So they're not going out of date, but therefore they're not being misused and whatever. So it's going to be really good in medical. It's the ability of AI to constantly look at things, look for patterns, find problems without ever getting tired. Does make a difference. I would argue you still need the human interface, but
Well, I would
that's
argue you probably need to put some
yeah.
ethics on the whole situation.
Well, governance and ethics is big, and that's an area we're starting to work in because we're finding people aren't thinking about that.
One final thought. Ricky Coates was here last episode and told us all about the Hack the Isles
Mm.
event, the boot camps to
Mhm.
train youngsters to get the people, students excited, get the industry noticed, to attract people who are fascinated by it. Something like that can have a lot of value, can't it?
I think it's a great idea, and I think that CyberSpark have hit on something by doing that. And I think actually Hack the Isles is a good title, and I think it actually brings an area that we've been trying to look at from an advisory group point of view. Anyway, Department of Education are obviously very keen to train the next generation of people. I think there's a need to look at how we're training our young people. You made the comment earlier on, Will, about practical versus academic. Too often, schools, we seem to go down the academic side of things and we don't look at the practical side enough. And I think something like Hack the Isles will actually encourage young people because it's hands-on practical. They'll see the fun and they'll get to see the importance of it as well.
Peter, thank you so much for joining us
You're
on the
welcome.
Cyberspark podcast. Some really useful insights there. If you're finding these Cyberspark podcasts helpful, there's loads more to come, all building up to that Hack the Isles event that Ricky was talking about an episode ago. You can learn all about this online at cyberspark.group. That's cyberspark.group. And we'll be back very soon. Bye bye.